Class 1 Porsche, Jan Heylen, Luca Mars find the first victory of 2025.
And in TCR, is Denis Dupont going to hold on?
Nothing doing. Hyundai's 1, 2, and 3 at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca.
Hello everyone, I'm Matt Yocum. Welcome to another edition of the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast, where today we're focusing on Michelin Pilot Challenge. We've got the championship leaders from both TCR and GS. We're going to start out with GS championship point leader Jan Heylen. Welcome to the show, my friend. Great West Coast swing. You scored the win and padding even more that championship point lead.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show, Matt. Yeah, we had a great weekend. We've all been doing this a long time, and some weekends don't always go your way, but Laguna sure did. So it just all came to us. Yellow came out at the right time. We had good pace overall. Pit stops were clean, good strategy. So it all came together and came away with a win.
Well, you're the professor to the college student. And one of the cool things about this year for you running the RS1 is you're getting a chance to race with Luca Mars. And you've got such an incredible book of knowledge. And I mean, it's like going to a master's class for a college student to have any kind of opportunity just to sit down with you and just pick your brain about so many different types of situations that you find yourself in and how to get in or out of bad situations, good opportunities. So what do you like so far just about your short time with Luca?
Yeah, I think what I like the most is that he's just a great kid. He's got a good attitude. Shows up at the track with no agenda other than he wants to do well. He wants to win. But it's nice to have a teammate that shows up and is not there to I'd say maybe to race for himself versus being a good teammate. And Luca is absolutely that. He's there to make the team work and to try and win a championship. And it's nice to have, especially at that young age, to have someone next to you with that attitude.
So we're hearing some car noise in the background, and you, like so many other drivers that compete in IMSA, not only are you competing in whether it's WeatherTech or Michelin Pilot Challenge, you're off running in some other series. You're also coaching young drivers. So you've got a full plate, and you're down in Florida, which is maybe about a 3-iron from where you are at Sebring over to Dunedin. So how are things coming? What's the process? Because some folks don't realize that you were just one of the thousands of families that were hit pretty hard by the hurricanes last fall. So where are we on the rebuild process and the whole timeline, do you think?
Yeah, we had a rough few months here, myself and my wife, Margaret. But yeah, the hurricane hit at not an opportune time for us. Not that it's ever a good time to be hit with a big hurricane, but it came right as we were pregnant with twin boys, and so losing everything you have right before these babies come into your world is it's just bad timing. But it's been a long, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a long winter for us. Losing the house, cars, and literally everything that we owned, apart from a handful of clothes that were left. It just took a while to rebuild, to find a place to live with a family of 5 now. And then just if you look around if you're home and you look around yourself, everything that you see around you we didn't have anymore. So I was maybe a little naive thinking, going into all of this, that it was going to be a little bit easier to rebuild from zero. But yeah, it took a few months to get settled back into somewhat of a normal rhythm. And now with having 3 kids instead of 1, that adds a lot of other things to it. But I feel like we're finally, not since long, but since a few weeks now, I feel like we're back into a better rhythm and a place where me and Margaret have some time for each other again and enjoy life a little bit, because it sure was rough for a bit. But there's always people out there that that have bigger challenges than what we've gone through, and it's been a good time to, I'd say, reflect on life and the choices we make and what we want to do with what's to come.
Has racing sort of been the mental break from dealing with all those challenges and the mental anguish, and you've got a young family, and there's so much on your plate that when you go off to a race like Laguna Seca, where you're able to check out, and does that give you a much needed mental break that makes you even stronger on the backside when you have to go back and continue going down your checklist of things that you have to work on to get the house started building again, to try to rebuild your lives?
Yeah, I think that has been part of the challenge, and also leading up to all of this. You the hurricane comes right at the time when you're negotiating your new deal for the following season, and then the team that I'd been with for 10 years then got sold in the middle of all of this. So it was add that on top of everything else that we had going on. I just didn't get around to talking to all the people that I needed to over the winter time, and luckily at the end, like I said, between Porsche and RS1, a very good deal came to me, but certainly not the way I wanted to start the season. And in terms of being at the track this weekend, and also I'd say most so like this weekend, being here at the race is probably one of the first race weekends where I am able to 100% focus on racing again. Where before, you're leaving a family behind where that is maybe not in a good place, and not all the help is there that is needed. So it has been a little tough, but that is what is so nice about racing in a I would say in a normal in a normal world is you've got a busy life at home with the family, and then when you get to the racetrack, all you focus on is racing, and I really enjoy that part of it. But um, I've had to, the last few months have not been like that. But like I said, we're getting back to it, and I feel like we're back in that place where I can show up at the racetrack and turn my phone off and just focus on racing.
Well, it certainly has been a stellar start to the season, a pair of seconds, and then also a win, leaving the West Coast. When you look at your teammate Luca Mars and you see his age, college student, just graduated high school, does it ever make you conjure up images of when you first started racing back when you got the go-kart with your folks?
Yeah, I think it's so nice that we're now at a place in life where it's for us to give advice and to help these young kids out. And I sure wish when I was younger that I had the people around me to help me in that regard. But yeah, it's really nice to be able to help Luca with the experience and knowledge that I have today. I'd say Luca is a lot more relaxed than I was at his age, and that's it just makes him a very easy person to work with. I think when I was younger, I was a lot more high strung, and maybe not as easy to deal with. But yeah, he's just a great guy, and also he has a lot of natural talent, because he's still very new to all of this. He has not been doing this for as long as I had, at his age. So he's got a lot of natural talent, and he always, he's very calculated. Never so far, right? We've done all the testing, all the racing we've done so far. Hasn't made a mistake or a big mistake. Keeps it on the track, and that's really impressive for a guy his age.
You look at the age you started racing karts, and it reminded me of a conversation I had with Tony Kanaan, where he got an opportunity with a race team. He flew from South America. He, grabbed a cot in the back of the race shop and didn't have a vehicle. Anytime he wanted to borrow the shop van, he could. Similar to your timeline, as you went through karts, you interned basically, worked for the summer for a super team, and then they ended up hiring you for the season. And was that one of, if not the biggest break that really started the ball rolling so for your racing career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had me and myself and my brother. We come from just an amazing family, and we're to this day, right? We're lucky to be so close to both my mom and my dad and the rest of the family. And we were, my mom and dad, they were in a good place in life, but we certainly didn't have the, let's say, the budget to go racing or pro racing. I was racing go-karts on I'd say like a more regional level, and at the end some national races with just with my dad and I. But then there was we had kind of um, tapped out or kept out on what we could do financially, and that was a hard conversation that my dad had to have with me at a very young age. And so the break that I got with the team in Belgium, it's called GKS. It's owned by Paul Lemons. They had me intern for over the summer, and then basically from there moved in with him and lived with him for the next 5 years. And that 100%, that is the if I think back about just my whole career, and what had the biggest impact on my career, that's definitely that moment right there.
So you mentioned you were there for about 5 years, and then you went back home, and, it's kinda like you hear it all the time when, a child moves out, a sibling takes over even more space. So did you lose your portion of the bedroom from your brother, that when you moved back home, you had to actually go up into the attic and make a 3rd floor?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I believe that at the time I left the house it was the year I was turning 15, so I was 14 going on 15. Me and my brother were still, I believe, still sleeping or sharing the same room. And then I left. I went on the road, and I basically didn't come home for about 5 years. Saw my parents very little, which in hindsight, I made some not so good life choices, when I was younger, towards my mom and dad. But I was so passionate about what I was doing that that was really the only thing on my mind at the time. But yeah, came home after all that time, and then my brother had really taken over the whole second floor. So the only thing that was left was an unfinished attic, and I took it on me to fix that up. And to this day, when we go home now together with the family, that's where we sleep. So that's a fun story.
So the next stop for you was England, and I love my stories with the legend Andrew Marriott. He talks about how all of his mates that would come over and sleep on the floor, sleep on the couch, you name it. And that really is a theme that runs through racing. So many times you can hear drivers, "Hey, when I was starting out, had nothing, myself and so and so and so and so, we shared an apartment together," and it carries on to this day. Two of your teammates, also roommates through the years, Patrick Long, but especially Jensen Button, both really left a mark with you in many ways, not just a teammate or a roommate, but almost more like brothers.
Yeah, we so when I first got started in or well, when I got my, let's say, my pro contract in karting with GKS, it was also the year that Jensen, maybe it was the second year I was with the team, is when Jensen joined the team. Also, it's a team where Jos Verstappen, Max's dad, where he raced when he was younger. And so was fortunate to just to team up with him. And we were just two young kids back then. And uh Jensen had already he had done some, I'd say he had done some more international races, I believe, when he came to the team together with his dad and a team out of England. And then he joined us, and we were, from there we were on the road for the next sort of 4 or 5 years. It was every race, back then we still had to all the travel was done in a car or in a van, so we would always be bunking together and sleeping on top of each other pretty much, as we were traveling. And then and then from there, through my towards the end of my karting career, 97, 98 is when I met one of my best friends, Patrick Long. He was then also racing go-karts in Italy, and he had moved to England 1 year prior to myself. And so by the time I got here, he was already kind of established, and he helped me out, finding a place to stay, in those first, the first couple months, and then we ended up living together for 2-3 years in England, and then another maybe 7 years or so in the U.S. But it's so fun thinking back for me in my career when I got signed with with my team in Belgium, and we started doing all these European and World Championships. I was actually paid to race go-karts. So I went from, kind of, it was all going to be over because we didn't have the money to continue, to getting paid to race go-karts. And then then they're like, well, now it's time to go to England because that's where you need to go to race cars. And then there was, I mean, I had no money at all. I'd used up the money that I had saved, and I say I was paid. It was also, it was very little money, but the money that I did save, I used to build that room at the house. And so when I went to England, I had exactly I had exactly $1,000. It was, or 1,000 euros back in the day. That's all the money I had, and I had promised myself, it was around 97, I think 97, 98, that I would never um, ask my mom and dad for any more money or funding. Um, so yeah, took the train, and with my $1,000, and got to England. And it's I actually had a conversation with Patrick not too long ago when I was asking him, like, like how did I get to the place that I got to on my first visit to England? Because I don't remember. We didn't have phones or cell phones, or that was still a new thing. And I must have, he said, well, we just drove, and we kind of knew where we were going. And when we got to the destination, we would we'd find a bed and breakfast or hotel or something like that. And it just all good memories. But yeah, England for me was super fun. I definitely some of my best years living there with Patrick. And the fact that you have no money when you're 19, 20 years old is really not it's nothing that you think about. It's all about racing and performing. And um it was unbelievable. The my 3 years in England were a time in my life that I'll never forget.
You hear it so often where people say, "Oh, man, it was like back in high school. So many great memories. I wish I could go back for one day because it was a magical period," because you forget a lot of the struggle. All you remember are the good times. And so when you're looking at that period, when you went to England, because of your time with Jensen, because when you first met, you spoke 3 languages, but none of the 3 were English, correct? Did he help you learn the English language?
Yeah, he did. It's I got my English start with 100% with Jensen. But it's when you're young, joining the team when we were 14, 15, naturally, already coming from Belgium, you need to speak multiple languages because very few people in the world speak Dutch or Flemish. So in school, we were taught French. So I was fluent in French and Flemish. And then, but English, because I left school at such a young age, English was not uh, that had not been a part of that. So when Jensen first came along, I didn't speak a word of English. But then we were together every day, all day. So it didn't take too long to pick that up. But yeah, he was my English teacher.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you mentioned your wife, Margaret, who also is the granddaughter of the King Richard Petty. And I recall during his final season, the Fan Appreciation Tour, they would sell die casts commemorating that race that you were attending. And a lot of the guys that were mechanics on cars would go and buy cases and cases of these die-cast cars as a side hustle, because when they would go back to wherever their shop was, they had somebody in the die-cast business, they're dying to buy, and so they were really working on a good side hustle, at least for that year. Did you ever have a side hustle early in your career besides, trying to dig out something in racing?
You bring that up because you do know something, or have you ever?
Well,
Yeah, my
Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise, you didn't have to quite go to that level, but were you a little concerned crossing the border at times?
Yeah, I was smuggling cigarettes into the UK. That was my side hustle. The cigarettes in the UK were, I think I don't remember exactly, but they were like 3 or 4 times the price that they were in Belgium. And so I'd drive, or I'd take the train back to Belgium, and then I'd drive over the border with a car full of cigarettes that I had, like, kind of, they were sold, like, they were pre-sold, but I had to cross them, over the border. So that was always a very nervous moment. But yeah, that was how I paid my bills for at least a season. That was really my main income, because it was hard to make that kind of money on anything else. And especially in the beginning, when we were still new in the US, sorry, in the UK, it wasn't so easy to pick up jobs left and right in the racing community, because you were still new, and a lot of people were already established or more established. So once 12 months in, I'd say we had a little bit more money um to pay some bills. I remember that parking was always a tough one. We'd go and we'd go and park the car at the airport, and then when we returned, we had no money to pay the parking, so we'd always have to trick some people into driving the car out the parking lot, or there was always something going on, because we had no money. But it's yeah, it's just so fun thinking back of those times.
So your father-in-law, Charlie Luck, ran NASCAR Busch Grand National, which is now Xfinity, also a lot of sports car racing in IMSA. You guys even teamed up for some time together. What was it like when you met the king for the first time?
It is so crazy, because coming from Belgium, in Belgium, they know Formula One, and they know who, Michael Schumacher is, and they don't necessarily know who Richard Petty is. So when I first moved to the US, and then now you start to watch some NASCAR races, and you learn more and more about the history of racing here in the US. And then, of course, it's one of the very first names that comes up on any level, right? Regardless of the type of racing that you're in. And so it's hard. Like, I mean, for us, he's Margaret's grandpa, and of course, for the family, it's so different. But I can um, I can tell by talking to some people, and people that know, it's such. I mean, it's just crazy to think that he's my grandpa now, But he's a fun guy. He's someone that I love. I need to absolutely spend more time with him, but he is the most fun guy to sit with, and just, I mean, I can sit next to him for hours and just listen to him tell stories from back in the day. It's yeah, they're the one story is, all the stories are just, they're crazy and fun. And yeah, it's nice listening to him.
I mean, he's such an incredible guy. When I was a little kid, he would come by our house. We only lived like 2 miles from MIS in Brooklyn, Michigan. And he'd swing by and pick me up and take me with him to the Richard Petty fan club appearance. So I
Hmm.
got a chance to go to the fan club, event, getting chauffeured by the guy who everyone was there to see. And then my buddies came with me the next year. And the coolest thing ever from that whole ride was that he showed a bunch of 6-year-olds how cool it is to drive without using your hands, and you can just use one knee. So it was a massive education for us. So when you're looking at the Petty family, so many folks make up that group. Now, let's just say if you were going to try to make something cool, maybe European, but you're also in level cross in Randleman, North Carolina, not a lot of, shall I say, opportunity to go from grocery store to grocery store to grocery store to find exactly all that cool stuff. So, did you happen to maybe go to a Walmart to try to find your ingredients to make something cool and European?
I think you're talking about my crepes, right? Yeah, that's kinda I guess that's kinda my staple. Everybody, whenever we go do a family event, all the especially the kids are always, waiting for the Belgian or the French crepe. So, that was always tradition at my house, when, that was kind of our special treat, when kids were over, there was a play date, my mom would always make, crepes and everybody seems to really like him here. So I'm always on call when I go over to Richard's house.
Was it easy to find all your ingredients though, going to the Walmart?
I thi- I I think it was the first time there's a story to this. Maybe you know more than I do, but we went to I think it was it like a dollar store or it was something like that. It's there's a couple that are similar to that. In my mind, like where we live, like I can't think of the last time I went to a dollar store, and evidently I haven't been there much. But the everybody at the petty house, they said you got to go to the dollar store because and I'm thinking in my mind, I don't really know what the dollar store is, so I'm thinking how am I gonna like the dollar store doesn't have flour, doesn't have all these things that I need, and then we went over to the dollar store and then turns out it was like a grocery store. Like to this day, I don't know if every dollar store is like that or that's just the one if that's just the one by their house, but it was just fun. I think we had to go to 3 different places to get all the ingredients, but it was quite the experience.
Well, this season has already been quite the experience with RS1. So, looking ahead, prognosticating, where do you feel like will be the strongest part of the schedule where you guys can pad even more your 50 plus point lead?
Yeah, that's really tough to say. The BOP is always a little bit of a moving target, and it's just part of it's part of what we do today. So part of that is it's good management around that. I think everybody knows that the car we drive is not doesn't perform as well as some of the other cars when it gets really hot. So for us, I think that's the biggest thing that we're always watching. If the temperature really gets up there, then I know, then we know it's gonna be tough for us. But apart from that, like the platform itself, that Porsche handles so well, and in clean air, it's extremely fast. So I think it's very weather dependent. The but really we just we just need to focus on good races, good execution, and making sure that we finish all of them as high as we can with the least with the least mistakes possible. um i i I think the last time we won the championship, I think we had a much more dominant car, let's say in the field, relative to the other manufacturers. And so for sure, it's a lot more difficult this time around, and that's why it's just so important for us to execute and and to always you know take the championship approach and not get carried away with trying to win a race when it's maybe not our day.
So, when you're conjuring up images of cars that you've driven on the road throughout your life, so we always like to ask whether it's your first car, or it was the worst car you've driven, or if it was the most priceless car across the landscape, what would it be for Jan Heylen?
This is a lot of people ask me this, and it's somewhat embarrassing, but I'm not so much of a car guy, believe it or not. Absolutely love what I do, obviously, and it's to this day, it's what the most passionate about. But outside of racing, I live a very different life, and I've never really Patrick, he's a good, he's the best example. We're kind of polar opposites there. He's a complete car nut, and that's everything that he does, and always did. Even when he was still racing, he was very much into cars and the old Porsches, and I just that's it's just a passion that I don't have. My very first car was not a car; it was a Sprinter box van that I could use from time to time when I was racing go-karts, because I didn't have a car for a very long time. And then after that, we had a few, people helping me out left and right. We gave me some small cars, but um, the one car that I have today is I have a '62 Volkswagen Beetle, and it's a car that I feel like, we all as a family, Margaret, and also like Olivia, it's what she loves that car too. And I've had a few cars here and there, but it's one that we've had that has been in the family the longest, and I think we'll keep it forever. So that's a car that we enjoy.
All right. So when you're looking at roommates, as we wrap it up here, you mentioned Patrick. You had such a long period that you guys roomed together. So who was the OCD roommate, or were you both?
Yeah, no, I have a good portion of that. I'd say that my OCD is a little more. I have better control over it now than I did when I was younger. I think I was a pretty I was I don't think I was well, my wife might say that I'm still not, but I don't think I was an easy roommate in the sense that I always wanted things to be a certain way and clean, and Patrick was certainly not that. Patrick's more of a hoarder, so we always make fun of that. Over time we've all moved a couple times from place to place, and I tend to travel very light, and Patrick he picks up his whole life and boxes everything up, and um, so that's kind of an ongoing joke. And for sure, back in the day, Jensen too, he'd get yelled at by not by me, because we were still very young then, but I know Paul and the crew, they would often have to tell him that he had to clean up after himself. He'd always leave his you know clothes and helmets and anything you can think of would always be lingering around. And yeah, I'm always the clean and organized one, which um, I hear is sometimes it's not so sometimes for other people not so fun to be around.
Well, Yan, we really appreciate you stopping by today on the podcast and allowing us to talk current day racing, but also go back in time and learn so much more about what makes up Jan Heylen, the driver, but also the person away from the track.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt. Really enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing you at the next race.
You got it, buddy. Can't wait to see you there. It's going to be a great one. Mid-Ohio, Enduro. So it's going to be exciting on NBC as well as on YouTube. Remember that in 2025, you can watch Jan and the rest of the men and women in the Michelin Pilot Challenge series live on IMSA's YouTube page and commercial-free in the United States. Also free globally, thanks to our friends at Michelin. If you thought that was it, think again. For more sports car podcast content, check out our pals from the paddock, from This Week in Sports Cars to Double Stint Podcast and the Midweek Motorsports Podcast. All great shows loaded with entertaining and educating content. Head over to the IMSA page on YouTube. Besides watching previous episodes of our show, you're not going to want to miss any of the Win the Weekend Season 3 episodes presented by Michelin. While they're on YouTube, remember to subscribe to our show or head over to your favorite podcast app destination to listen in on the audio version. Leave your comments and feedback or hit me up on X. We'd love to hear from you. Well, we've already covered the Grand Sport portion of Michelin Pilot Challenge. Now on to TCR and the championship leaders, Preston Brown and Denis Dupont. I got to say, the Gunslingers, you guys showed it out in Laguna Seca. Great weekend.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, that was an incredible race for us. I know you could see the elation, the celebration that was going on at the end of that race. Certainly, we're very happy with the result, obviously, but more than we've anticipated.
Well, Danny, when you look at just how the season started, you guys won Daytona, had a challenging Sebring, and then we go out west, Laguna Seca. Now you've got 2 wins on the year. But I've got to say this. I feel like that you guys need to add to the college fund for Aaron's daughters, because I feel like that your crew chief's daughter's stuffed animals, which they were there at Daytona, you won. He brought out 2 new ones for Sebring, challenging weekend, went back to the well, brought the originals back, and you guys won again. So you might need to start looking at a little bit of a donation there.
Yeah, I'm sure Owen would be happy about that. No, it's been a great start of the year. Like you said, Daytona was very strong, and then again at Laguna. Until Laguna, it was copy paste of last year. When you look at Daytona and Sebring, and I'm happy that we could turn it around faster than last year, I guess. So now we are in a good position going into Mido.
Well, for both of you guys, when you look at just where you are at this juncture of the season, you look at your endurance record, which is incredible, a second and 2 wins. We're going to be going to Mid-Ohio, which is another endurance event. So, Preston, why do you feel like you guys excel even more in the endurance type situations?
Well, certainly for myself, I can say I get sort of more and more settled in and into a rhythm as a race unfolds. And last year at Ohio, if you look back when we were at Daytona last year, we actually had a third guy in the car with us, a good friend of ours who we've raced with in the past. But Mido was the first one we split just between Denny and myself, and I think, yeah, it was a mixture of, obviously the solid driving. Also, we had some very good sort of, strategy that wasn't 100% what everybody else was doing at the beginning of that race. Um, and I don't know, I really like the longer races. Denny, do you have anything you would think about why we've excelled there?
Yeah, well, we take a I think we take a composed approach to the races. And when we've got 4 hours, we really focus on the long runs, we focus on the strategy, we focus on bringing the car back home. And then it helps us having strong results. And yeah, we've got a good track record. We're going into Mido confident, but we need to stay humble. And we know that, the other lineups are very strong and they'll be very competitive. But it's just because it plays into our cards where in the way we approach those races where maybe the fastest lap time is not the most important, but the way we use the tires, the way we use the strategy and all of that. So that helps us a little bit.
I was gonna say my racing background really does come from longer amateur races. So I am well aware of the cost of mistakes. It can be very high in a long race and put you right out. Doesn't matter if you are running, yeah, super fast lap times, like Denny said. If you make a big error, or you have an incident, that can be all over. So I think that's probably a piece of it as well.
Well, I think when you look back to last year as well, you won Mid-Ohio, kicking off a great run during the summer, but that's when you guys really started racking up the podiums. Now you're looking a year ahead of just where this team is and how they've grown. Is it more pressure to produce knowing the um, how this team has performed in the past, but you're hitting that sweet spot of the season? Or are you more relaxed and confident just knowing where you guys are as a program?
Go ahead, Denny.
No, I think we have more confidence. Last year we arrived, to be honest, we arrived at Daytona, not knowing 100% where we would be in this new team at Bryan Herta Autosport, and we were surprised by the pace and what we could do. And then, like you said, it took us the summer to get into the right rhythm. Hopefully this year, knock on wood, it's a bit earlier, but we have a bit more confidence, I would say. Also, honestly, if you look at last year, I feel like we were slightly stronger on pace than we've been this year so far. So this year we've managed to really extract, I think, the maximum of those opportunities. So it gives us a bit more confidence, I think, going into those races, knowing that we can extract the maximum. Now we also shows that we have a little bit of work on the pace side of things to keep that momentum, but I think it only gives us a bit more confidence going into it.
Well, Preston, since the confidence is high, what race is coming up after Mid-Ohio that you guys are highlighting could be more trophies?
Well, I really do like Watkins Glen a lot. Looking forward to that. Road America, another possibility. I'd say the ones that I have the least amount of experience with and have some room to go, I'd say, in terms of um, my own driving at would be CTMP. Indianapolis, unfortunately, was cut pretty short for us last year. I did feel good in practice and in qualifying going into that race, but just based on what happened, I don't have as much time there as everywhere else. So yeah, those ones will be a challenge.
I think when you look at different teams and you can see where there's a special group that they're friends away from the racetrack, or it's just a professional working group. Yes, they both get success, but it's different when you see that special group that you know that they're pals talking to each other, during the week, and not about racing, about family stuff or whatever. When you look at yourself and your crew chief, uh, Aaron Pfeiffer, when do you feel like that this group really came together? You're like, you know what, this is really going to be something cool. Was it a team building experience, or just did it build up to that?
I'd say it built up to that in the year before we moved to Bryan Herta. We'd all known each other at that point the year before for over a year. And even though we weren't racing together every weekend in the same car, there was just some good natural rapport. And I think we all three of us were, we were in alignment in terms of what we wanted and how we thought we could get there. What do you think, Denis?
No, I agree. I also remember a nice weekend at the beach where before that season where it helped, building more connection. But yeah, we arrived at Bryan Herta Autosport as a group, and wanting to adapt to that team and learn from that team and the way they do things. But we had already that relationship. So, like I said, at Daytona, we didn't really know what to expect in terms of performance, but we knew what to expect in terms of relationship and way of working together. We had already experienced that for a few months. So I think that gave us a bit of a head start.
So, Preston, Denny kind of teed it up, talking about the team building weekend at the beach in the Outer Banks. And I guess the question that everyone's going to want to know after we start to get into this story, so who was the captain of the boat? And how much of an amusement park ride was it really?
So it was, I was the captain. So we went to this place. It's actually near Wrightsville. And there's this place where it's a great spot to just sort of, beach your boat and get out and relax for a little while. But it is a spot where the tides move in and out pretty quickly by this little, really small barrier island. And I don't know if it was full moon or what was going on, but the tides were pretty high that day in terms of the swings. So we hadn't been out. The tide was going out when we got there, but I thought we had a lot more time than we did. And we ended up, and we weren't alone in this, were we? There were a number of boats, but we got pretty stuck for a moment there on the beach. And then I was probably, I don't know, it took us 30 minutes or maybe even more to get unstuck, various boats trying to pull us off. And I don't have CTO. I probably should have CTO, but when CTO comes along and you're a boat that's in trouble, they're smelling blood in the water. They want about, I don't know what it is, but it's ridiculous amounts of money to do.
They're paying for someone's kid's college education with
yeah. Well, it's the people like me that are really making the money for them. But we did get off. We did get off the beach and got back. We had a little bit of a rough dock landing too. I think I was a little flustered at that point.
So, Denny, how would you critique his storytelling? Is he giving us all the info? Because I also expected to hear at some point that we had propeller out of the water. Because you never know in these kind of situations, and the tide changes, and you're out in the water. Crazy stuff happens.
Let me start by saying I don't coach boat sailing. So I decline any responsibility. You also forgot to mention a slight contact with another boat.
Oh yeah, there was that.
Cynthia being left in the water while the boat is gone, having to come back. So,
it was kind of a clown rodeo for a minute there.
Yeah. So how would you critique being the driving coach, putting your driving coach hat on? How would you critique how he handled the pressure? Because not only when you're having something bad going wrong quickly, and then there's people watching. It's just like, oh my God, dude, I hope that no one's paying attention. So how would you rate his driving ability, but also handling that stress in that situation?
I would say probably Laguna is a good example that shows how much of an improvement we've done on that side. Because when we look at last year, the start of the race was difficult, and then a few mistakes. And this year, the start of the weekend was actually difficult, and the quali was difficult. But then, when we look at how he raced, it was pretty good. And actually, if you look at the fastest lap time, his fastest, my fastest, is the closest gap we've had since the beginning. So that shows me, okay, we can look at the lap time is great, but more important is how did I manage that race that maybe started on the wrong foot, and how do I get back in it? And like we said, stay composed, stay focused, avoid the simple mistakes, and still bring the car in decent position and gain a few spots. So I think that's where we gained a lot, actually.
See, what you're saying is you should schedule every year at least one trip out to the ocean. So that way Preston can make sure, he handles the stress perfectly when he's got another Bryan Herta Autosport Hyundai racing side by side that you did at Laguna Seca. And then my other question is, what's the rules at Bryan Herta as far as racing your teammate? Because that always seems to come up, because you guys, it's always like throw a blanket over all the Herta Armada, the way, those cars are always so tight, time-wise, and close racing together.
So the rule number one is it's a Hyundai's championship. The rule number two is a Bryan Herta championship, and then it's a driver's championship. So that should give you an idea of how we need to approach those races. So long as we don't make contacts and crashes and things like that, we are free to race. But they always mention that, if push comes to shove, they'll intervene if we cannot behave as professionals. But so far, sometimes you can have a slight contact and, approximations, but so far it's been, I think, fairly good, really good.
So the slight contact,
Yeah, I
Preston,
would agree that.
would that be more like the boat when you're out in the ocean?
Yeah, the boat was
Just a glance.
forgotten because it was such a minor thing. It was just a glancing. Yeah, I don't even think we traded any gel coat. We're absolutely allowed to race inside the team, but everybody is doing it with professionalism and with the knowledge that it's be silly to take somebody else out or even take yourself out inside the team. That's just going to hurt. It's going to hurt all of us. So it was a little tight at the end of Laguna last weekend, but it was all fair and really, really great racing.
So both of you, and I want to say this in today's terms, it seems like you're always looking on, like Nick Tandy's son, Felix, 7, 8 years old, racing. Shep Sullivan, Sully Sullivan's kid, 7, 8 years old, both racing karts. Now, you two came along a little bit later in a driver's career window, so to speak. But how much of a challenge was that, trying to compete against folks that have had a few more years of experience? Or in some ways, was it more of an advantage because you've got cultured more in life, so you're able to handle a lot of the situations that come along in racing?
I think it's some of both, to be honest. Certainly, I started racing later in my life than most of my teammates and most of the rest of the drivers in the paddock. Honestly, I'm 49 this year, and I've been racing, I guess, 12 or 13 years. So, quite a while, but the vast majority of that has all been amateur racing, grassroots stuff in lots of different cars, from some pretty humble, junky stuff to some very, very nice stuff as well. But certainly that wasn't at a level anywhere near how my IMSA stuff has been for the last couple of years. What it did teach me, though, was again, a lot of these were longer endurance races. So patience, car care, survival in traffic, all those things were lessons that I definitely haven't had to just sort of put together really quickly on on sort of a moment's notice. That's been a long development, but it has been hard. I mean, getting fast in a car when you're in your late 30s or 40s um, seems to be a little bit more of a challenge than if you start karting when you're very young, or maybe even jumping into some GT machinery when you're 16 or 17 years old. I would have killed for the chance to do that kind of thing back then, but it just really wasn't an option for me. And I'm grateful that I was able to start and get to where I am as late as I have. I think Denny's a little bit different. He had some racing time when he was younger, and he's
Yeah.
not so old yet.
Yeah.
What do you start about 14 or 15, Denny?
Yeah, in the late 14. So I had the chance to do some karting, and I had the chance to do it at a decent level. It's just I started, like you said, probably 7 years, 6 years, 8 years, depending on the competition later than the other ones. Um, Also, we didn't get the chance to have such a big schedule, only a few races per year compared to probably most of the other kids. Um, but so at that point, of course, it's a disadvantage on the track in the karting seasons in that year. If you take a longer approach, maybe the silver lining is uh, you learn to work really hard outside of the track, because you need to catch up with those guys, and I think I worked hard on other aspects, physical training, optometrist training, and things like that, that were useful later. And when you move into cars, in, anyway, you're not going to do 20 races a year probably. So it teaches you to work harder, I guess on the other side of the track. Then I moved to the US, and then I had kind of to start everything from scratch again. But again, it gave me that experience already. So, if I had to redo it, would I have liked to start at 8 and do 20 races a year? Yeah, absolutely. But that wasn't the journey.
I think when you look at just the makeup of the team and the fact that all of you have, jobs away from the racetrack, and there's a group at Bryan Herta Autosport that prepares the car and brings it to the track. Now, for you guys, does it make, because you're not at the shop, the communication, is it at a higher level and more focused because you all try to keep in contact with everything that's going on and game plans and strategy, because you're not, in the same room a couple days each week?
Um, I, I don't know. I'm sure we have a different approach. That's for sure. We have like you said, we have other jobs during the week, uh, but we spend a lot of our own time focusing on what we will do for the next race. I think it's just a different approach. Maybe at other moments during the week compared to the other ones. Um, but I wouldn't see a that big of a difference in terms of content. I would expect in terms of conversation.
I would say Bryan Herta they're doing a great job of getting all the cars, if there's any repairs that need to be done, getting that taken care of really quickly when they get back to the shop in Indianapolis, and then putting a setup on the baseline setup on the cars before they get there. So while we haven't been doing a ton of talking with most of the crew until we do arrive, we're confident every weekend that the car is going to arrive ready to go. And that was really one of the key reasons, I think, besides obviously the phenomenal track record of the team over the years. But we knew if we moved to Bryan Herta Autosport that we'd be getting that level of professional preparation and attention to detail. So sure, Denny and Aaron and I do quite a bit of pre-gaming, and strategizing and the rest before the races. But a lot of it does start right when we get there. Yep.
Denny, I'll start with you. So many times drivers are superstitious, or you'll have other faction of drivers who they're not superstitious at all. They don't even try to go down that road. So Denny, do you have any kind of superstition when it comes to racing?
Not so much, I would say. It's always a question of, before the race, sometimes you're more nervous, sometimes you're less nervous, and there's a lot of me trying to understand why am I not nervous this time, or why am I nervous, and do I feel like I'm in the right state for the race. But I don't have those, those kind of I need to wear this or to do that, or very little of that. Music is important to me, so probably like going to the track, I'll listen the same kind of music, or even before the race in the truck, I'll listen a little bit to music, but it's more to to be relaxed and be in a good mood, rather than really being like, yeah, I need to listen to that or do this for the race to go in the right direction.
Now, what kind of music do you listen to?
uh, well, I'll listen to some
See, this
Eminem,
is funny.
probably before the race. I like Afrobeat actually, so I listen to those kind of music depending on if I want to be a bit more motivated or a bit more relaxed.
Yeah, we get in the car together, and I feel like I'm bringing the old man music to the to the mix.
So when you need to be like a little argy-bargy, you need to kind of be even like 11 tenths, so to speak, you throw in Kid Rock or, some really crank it up.
I think a good Eminem song is always the right choice.
Preston, any superstitions on your part?
Yeah, I wouldn't say any real superstitions. I do have a bit of a routine. I have butterflies pretty much every race until I get in. And the minute I'm strapping into the seat, it's the calmness and the focus descends, and it all goes away, and it's time to do the job. And I think that's probably one of the things that I like most about racing is the focus, and sort of the singular focus. But I tend to have to, maybe take a little pre-race bio break and a few other things that are kind of a joke and a little bit of a routine, you'd say. But no superstitions.
I mean, I've heard some drivers that if they get on a roll, they've got their favorite pair of underwear, or they've got their favorite pair of shoes, or they tell their wife or girlfriend not to come to the race because, they've got the mojo right now. So you guys have never experienced any of that, have you?
He's got shoes and gloves that need to be retired.
Yeah,
Admit it.
Yeah, I've had the same shoes, but it's not a question of luck. It's a question of feel. Like I don't like to change those things. Like my gloves are old. My shoes, I've had the exact same model for 7 years. I change shoes, but the same model.
They are
Just-
beat.
7
oh, yeah,
8 years.
same model, different ones, but exactly the same model.
All right.
Yeah.
At least it's the same model, but not 7 or 8 years old.
No, but
They look like it.
We had Jan Heylen on earlier, and of course, his wife Margaret is the granddaughter of Richard Petty. And there was one time in the 60s, he had a real bad issue going on inside of his helmet. And he kept trying to scratch, but he couldn't get his hand up in there. And every time he's going down the straightaway, the team thinks because that's the signal for I need relief. So they went and they got some big name driver like Pearson or Buddy Baker that's just fallen out, and they're sitting in the pit. And here comes Petty again by. He's like scratching the helmet. And they're like, when's he going to come in? And then finally, after 30 minutes, Buddy Baker said, look, I'm out of here. It's obvious he's not going to get out of the car. And does that kind of conjure up some images maybe for you, Preston? Maybe VIR? Did you have something similar going on?
I thought you might be going there. Sure, certainly does. 2 years ago this summer at the VIR race, it was super hot. And I remember that we were a little rushed on pit row. I think maybe the anthem got done a little bit late. For whatever reason, there wasn't a whole lot of time between when I pulled on my helmet and when I had to strap in and get off the grid. And I pulled my helmet on, and something stung me. I could tell right away that it was a bee or some sort of fly, a wasp. Something had stung me, and I didn't have any time to do anything about it. It was too late. It was, like I just said a minute ago, the minute I get in there, it's focus time. It's not time to worry about anything else. And sure, so it hurt, but I just got down to business and I ran my stint. And I don't think, and I sure I felt it the whole time, but it kind of faded into the background. It wasn't until I was coming in to hand the car over that I think I mentioned it on the radio, and Aaron was like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I got stung on my head." No, no way. And I got up on top of the pit box, got up on top of the pit box, and pulled off my helmet. And sure enough, it was outside of the balaclava, but a bee or a small wasp or something like that was right there, and it tumbled out on the floor. And just yeah, everybody was shocked that I just drove around with those things stinging me the whole time. But I think that sort of points to the focus.
So when you guys are looking at trying to improve your racecraft, and obviously, a lot of time in the sim, but how do you two make each other better? Because you have such strong points in different areas. Denny, you're the driving coach. Walk us through.
Yeah, we try to work in between the races as much as we can. Work on, of course, preparing the track for that specific track, but we try to work on the like you said, on the racecraft. Um, you know, of course, we are very happy with the results, and sometimes you're happy because we win and you can do a good show. But every time that happens, because basically Preston did a good job in the first stint, and always things that we don't really think about. But he brings me the car in one piece, okay, very clean, okay, with good brakes, still okay. Like the rear tires are still okay. So it's all those small things that from the outside maybe we don't think of, but when he's doing his own race, he's thinking about that. He can save a little bit of fuel to help us in the pit stop, all those kind of things. So there is a lot of work being done that maybe we from the outside we don't appreciate.
Yeah, I would agree on all those things. I mean, Denny's been invaluable as a driver coach for me for the last couple of years. Really helped my racecraft, and just even driving fundamentals has all been a big improvement working with him. But yeah, maybe it is a whole bunch of this sort of smaller things that add up. If you look at, for instance, if you look at Laguna, um, I had I had really good pace in the second half of the first hour there. I was able to, I think I was managing to keep pace with the front runners, even though we were considerably down the order. Um, on those tires, and the tires didn't feel great at Laguna after even 20 minutes. They really kind of went off a cliff quickly, and then there was slower uh tire drag after that. But it was a little bit more slippery out there, certainly. Um, but um, we also have, we do really quick driver changes, and we have a really fast crew in terms of tire changes and fueling. So we were able to jump a couple spots, getting out of the pit. And I think we've consistently found that we've been able to do that. And we certainly spend plenty of time practicing our driver changes, and all of that, because yeah, that can make a big difference.
Now, Denny, I'm going to go ahead and help you in this regard and try to put a little peer pressure on Preston, because he's got that vintage 911. And I know that there's a great weekend in November, and they just so happen to call it the Classic 24. You guys need to bring out the 911 and go down and run the Classic 24 to have some fun away
It's
from the
been
driver.
offered.
Yeah, yeah. I think we don't have to push Preston too much to get there.
No, no. I mean, I hope we get to do that this year. It's certainly it's been penciled in. Um, that car has been such a fun one for me. I found it really kind of by chance. It was advertised on a Porsche internet forum, well-known one that I guess is probably not as popular as it used to be. But back in sort of the Audis around in around 2010 or 11, it was really the spot. and it was just advertised really poorly with bad pictures and not a whole lot of real clarity on its history. Um, I wanted it. I wanted a track car. I wasn't even racing at that time. I was thinking about it, but I wanted a track car, and I've been a Porsche guy for a long time. So bought it sight unseen. It arrived. I could tell right away that it was more than it was more than I had thought it was. And we started digging. My mechanic Cody Forbes at Black Forest Racing and I started digging into that car's history, and we found out that it was a car that ran in the BPR over in Europe in 1994, 1995. It had run as GT1 class, so I mean it's pretty amazing how far those cars came quickly in the mid 90s as it quickly moved on into the F40s and the McLaren F1s that were winning. But at the time that it had been racing, it was a GT1 class car. And so we restored it. It didn't have its original engine, but some of the bodywork had been changed, but we restored it to how it had been, and now it is just an amazing piece of history and plenty scary to boot. It's got 700 horsepower at the wheels.
Well, I love how Hyundai thinks outside the box, and you've got the drivers academy, and you went to New York City this past year. My big question though, when you were down in Daytona for the Rolex weekend, and you and your posse all went over to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and you got in a different sim. You got in a sim of an airplane. Did anybody get sick by any chance? You don't have to mention names. You can just hypothetically call them, something that we would definitely know that's who that person is, so we don't ruin their street cred. But did anybody get sick in the sim?
I don't think so. Um, those sims were pretty impressive. They ranged from pretty basic all the way up to one that was, I don't know, they said it was easily a $10 million simulator or something like that. Full motion simulating a Canadian regional jet, a CRJ. But I don't think anybody got sick. Everybody did quite
Yeah,
well.
I don't remember someone being sick. I remember being humbled a little bit by Preston on the sim on the flying simulator. I was hoping to do better than that, but clearly clearly I could learn there.
Well, I will say this, that you guys there's no doubt about it. When you look at your team, it's kind of the dog team, and you each have an awesome looking family friend. And we'll start with the first furry, ladies first. And we're going to go with Lucy, who is Preston's dog. And then Pablo is Denny's dog. But I will say this, if you're going to be a crew chief, there's no better name for your dog than Lucky. Because that's the perfect quality that you need to have when you're on top of the box. Wouldn't you agree, Preston?
Yeah, Lucy's pretty close to Lucky. Lucy's obviously a lovely dog. She's a 10-year-old golden. She's pretty stupid, and likes to get herself into trouble. But she's been my companion now for a decade. And it was pretty funny, when I met Denny and I was like, oh yeah, I've got this dog, got a golden retriever. I have a golden retriever.
I love the fact that you showcase their part of your lives, because I mean, Pablo spent a little bit of time in the sim.
Yeah, Pablo spends a lot of time on the sim. He comes from Belgium like me. I had Pablo in Belgium. I brought him in Montreal. He came here. Um, he likes the cold as much as I do in the winter. So we had to buy him shoes and everything to help him adapt. He's there lying on the floor as always.
Well, I will say this though. When you look at winning trophies and you happen to need a spare water dish, IMSA WeatherTech Racing and Michelin Pilot Challenge, they seem to come up with the best trophies in case of hydration needs.
They certainly do. That was a pretty funny moment. And we just thought those would make some pretty entertaining pictures. So getting Lucy to drink out of it. I mean, it's a cup, right? You're supposed to drink out of it.
I mean, that's a good size bowl cup. It's got the right size. So real quick, we're gonna head on out. But your first cars, Preston, we'll start with you.
The first one that sort of wasn't a hand-me-down, or
No, the first car you got when you were 16, trying to be, a chick magnet.
it was not a chick magnet. That was my mother's ex Buick Century wagon.
No, did it have the wood on the
It-
side?
It did have some of the wood on the side. Yeah, the sticker. You got it. And my brother and I have a twin brother, not a racer, but we beat the what out of that car. And then I remember my dad got in it for some reason. Probably had to take it to go get inspected to get it registered the next year. And he got in it, and I think we'd completely worn out the ball joints and all the front end. But we didn't notice, we were just like, whatever. And he got in it and he's like, "You can't drive that car anymore until I get it worked on." And we're like, "What, Dad?" Yeah, that was a lovely GM product.
Dropping the hammer. See, it wouldn't have happened if it had been a Hyundai back then, but it wouldn't have been
Exactly.
then. So, Denny, what about yourself? Your first
Yeah,
road car?
funny enough, from Belgium, a small Chevrolet. It's called Chevrolet Aveo. I don't remember the name here in North America. It's not the same name, but the smallest Chevrolet you could find. It was a electric blue, which I thought was cool back then. I think otherwise now. But yeah, no, it was a fun little car. Also, maybe tried a bit too many things with the car back then. But yeah, no, that was fun.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for stopping by the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast and telling some great stories about your past, and also looking ahead to Mid-Ohio, the next race up on the Michelin Pilot Challenge schedule.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Matt. We enjoyed it, and we are really looking forward to the next race.
All right. You need to get another trophy. You never know. You might need another dog bowl, water dish. You never know. Well, thanks, guys. Preston Brown and Denis Dupont from Bryan Herta Autosport as they take their Hyundai in the championship point lead up to Mid-Ohio and next. Also to Jan Heylen for stopping by to talk about GS. And you, the IMSA WeatherTech fan, stopping by and spending this hour with us on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. For the team here at the show, I'm Matt Yocum. We'll see you next time at the track.